and what would be a motovlog on my Tuono V4 factory without a cold start. Whew. Oh, it never gets old. Hi, I'm Chad, and welcome to another motovlog. As per usual, I am aboard my 2017 Aprilia Tuono V4 1100 factory, and in today's video we are going to talk about something that most people don't like talking about, and that is crashing. And we're going to break it up into a few different subcategories of crashing. First, I'm going to talk about all of the crashes that I have experienced on a motorcycle, and then we are going to talk about what I did afterwards to come back from those crashes, in hopes that if you've crashed your motorcycle for the first time, or second or third or fourth or so on, these might be some tips that can help you get back in the saddle and feel confident once again. Whee! That was in virtual reality, of course. So as you probably know if you're subscribed to my channel, and if you're not subscribed to my channel, I'd really appreciate it if you did that for me. Subscribe, like this video, drop a comment below and tell me about your crashes if you've had any, or how you've avoided crashing thus far. Because as the old adage goes, it is not a matter of if, but of when. But anyways, I recently looped my 2009 Yamaha WR250X. It is a Supermoto that I purchased specifically so that I could learn how to wheelie. I break down that entire crash, what I did wrong, and how you can avoid doing the same on your motorcycle in this video that I'll link in the card above. So this, of course, was my most recent crash, and it was purely a result of me not paying enough attention to what I was doing and not really thinking it through and having a plan. I compressed the suspension to do a power wheelie in first gear, which really is not necessary at all, and the bike got away from me, went too far back. I panicked and thought, oh, I can walk this one off. Took my foot off the pegs, meaning I couldn't save it with the rear brake, and I ate it. So when I did this, I did some ligament damage to my thumb. I hyperextended it or bent it or something somehow when I was coming down off the bike, or when the bike was flying away from me. So I'm still on the mend there. Again, it's been about 4 weeks since that happened. I've been splinted for the last week or so, just trying to wear that as much as possible. It's pretty much, aside from eating and taking a shower and pooping, this is pretty much the only time I've had it off since I recorded my last video. But anyways, that was painful. Still is a little bit painful to this day, but not permanent. Earlier this year, back in June, when I started club racing and I was taking the new racer orientation to get my club racing license, I found oil on the racetrack on my outlap during a session and didn't see the red flag in time. Wasn't really anything I could do to avoid it. I rode over the oil and just had no traction whatsoever and slipped and fell. Pretty minor, wasn't going very fast. It was my outlap and it was turn 5 on the racetrack, so it was a bummer. Bike was a bit banged up, but I was totally fine. Still though, definitely had a little bit of a mental impact on me for the rest of the weekend, just being paranoid about oil and other debris on the racetrack that can make you fall, but powered through it. The last crash I had before that was back in March of 2017 on my old 2006 Triumph Daytona 675. Pretty good. Went 4 years without crashing a motorcycle. Good job to me. But anyways, it was the first track day I had attended after getting my club racing license for the first time back in December of 2016, doing the new racer school at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway. This track day was at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway, and a lack of sleep and poor planning and taking a pit lane and going back out thinking my tires were still hot, and also not knowing when was a good time to open the throttle in a corner, led to a pretty nasty high side where I ragdolled through the air and ended up severely bruising the plateau of my tibia and the condyle of my femur, as well as dislocating my 5th metatarsal in my right foot, which is still about 2 millimeters out of place to this day. And I also sprained both of my ankles and my left wrist. That was a tough one. The bruising to my bones was bad enough. Basically, a bone bruise, in case you're not familiar with it, is clusters of hairline fractures, very, very small fractures, so small that most x-ray machines will not detect them. I actually had an MRI done, and that was how I found out I had done that damage in the first place. My knee was super swollen and it wasn't getting any better, and there were no breaks or fractures according to the x-ray, but when I got the MRI back, it was just lit up. Small hairline fractures everywhere. So my bones bled and probably leaked some synovial fluid and made this really nasty mix of acai looking junk, and had to have that drained. But after that, did physical therapy. It was about 3 or 4 months for 80-90% recovery. But once that was done, I fixed up my Daytona and I carried on. That was probably the crash that I learned the most from, as the whole cause of the crash was me opening the throttle before I had even really started turning into the corner. So because of that, I had a decreasing amount of traction while I was trying to increase the amount of power I was putting to the ground and through the rear tire. Thus, I went for a slide, rear end regained traction, and just tossed me up over the bike. I have a very, 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 very clear memory as well of me looking straight like this and seeing the ground and my bike rolling beneath me. Was not a good time. But again, forced me to really look at the way that I was riding and get better about it. From there on, I started paying much more attention to how the MotoGP guys were doing. Every time I'd watch a MotoGP race, what exactly they were doing, how deep into a corner they were braking, when they were getting back on the gas in the corner, and it taught me how to be a much faster, safer, and more confident rider. And then I came back to the racetrack in 2020, applied those skills, and now it's 2021, and I'm a club racer at an amateur level that has trophies. The crash before that was almost exactly 1 year before that. It was at Chuckwalla again, and it was because I tried to drag my elbow in a corner, showboating for a friend of mine who I knew was behind me. He just couldn't quite get past me. Had a nice low side, probably going about 70 miles an hour when it happened, but I was dumb and thought I could save it somehow, and just death gripped the handlebars and went sliding off the track into the dirt, hit like a little dip in the ground or something that bounced to the bike, lobbed me up and flipped me over it, causing me to land directly on my right shoulder and subluxate it. A subluxation is a partial dislocation, so my shoulder popped out of the socket. I put it back in about a minute later once I realized what had happened, and in panic because I don't like dislocating stuff. That took about 10 weeks of physical therapy before my shoulder was 100% again. Didn't really learn anything from that one except to not try to drag my elbow, which I actually went and did. I think the track did after that. Not because I'm fast, but because I just wanted to look cool in a picture. Sigh, Chad, sigh. So I guess I didn't really actually learn much from that crash at all, and that's bad on me, because I probably could have avoided my high side, because I'm pretty sure I did the exact same thing there, where I had already been opening the throttle, not like wide open, but enough where the engine was trying to rev up and get the rear wheel to spin more, as I tried to add a little bit of lean angle to get my elbow on the ground. So made the same mistake twice, and I paid for it twice. Both of those two crashes at the racetrack happened on my 2006 Triumph Daytona 675. Oh, so good every time. That's 4 crashes we've covered out of 10. So I actually crashed 3 times in one day. The first and only time actually that I ever did SoCal Supermoto. So this was at a kart track, pretty low speed stuff. The first time I crashed was the first session of the day. It was about 8 or 8:30 in the morning in like February, or maybe it was March or April. I think it was April, but it was cold and overcast. And I didn't listen to them when they said that the track was cold and you should let the tires get up to temp. I was mindful of that for maybe the first 2 laps that I spun around the track. After that, I just started trying to go as fast as I could, and I fell down in a very slow first gear hairpin. I was probably going 20 miles an hour or less, and I just low-sided, kind of skidded. Wasn't a big deal. Picked the bike up, it was fine, continued riding. The second time I went down was because I tucked to the front going into another slow corner that had a bit of banking. It was a second gear corner, but it was a little uphill as you're braking into it, and tucked the front, slid up the hill. Wasn't a big deal, didn't hurt at all. Picked the bike up and got back on, and I don't even think anybody noticed. It happened so quickly, and I was back on the track so quickly. For the third time I crashed that day was really my own fault, but something kind of threw me off on the track. So when I was doing the SoCal Supermoto class, it was the Sport Bike Fundamentals class, and they had a bunch of different markers on the track. A marker where you should start braking, a marker where you should turn in or start turning into the corner, a marker where you should apex, and a marker where you should exit to. I don't know how someone else must have gone off the track or something, but dirt ended up on the turn-in marker, and as I was coming up to it, I was like, oh shoot, I need to turn it a little early to avoid that. And that just pushed me out wide. I ran off the track and into the dirt, and at that time, didn't know any better than to tap the front brake on Q3s in pretty deep dirt. So I locked the front wheel up pretty quickly and scorpioned it. Bike flipped over, landed on top of me. I was okay, just bruised and battered, and that being the third crash of my day, I decided to call it and went home. Lots of things to learn that day. Don't push it on cold tires in a cold track. Be more cognizant about your braking, and don't use the front brake in the dirt if you are on sport bike tires. Bad idea. So that's 7 crashes out of 10. So what were the first 3? They all happened on my first bike, my 2003 Honda CBR 600 RR. I had that bike for almost 2 years. Ended up selling it to buy my 2006 Triumph Daytona 675. It was a great bike to learn on. Definitely more motorcycle than I should have been on, but alas, I am here. I made it through to the other side. Probably would have learned more and learned quicker on a 400, or I guess there weren't 400s at the time, a 300 or a 250. But nonetheless, I made my decisions, and again, I'm still here today. So the third crash on that bike happened when I was riding Azusa Canyon way back in February of 2015. It was the first time I'd been to the canyon in probably 3 months. It was a very cold, overcast morning, and there was a lot of fog up towards the top of the mountain. And I thought it was a racetrack. So I went up there, did a scouting lap with a couple people I had just met, one of which was actually Brappy the Clown, if you remember that guy. Daniel, remember that day we both crashed? That was a challenging day, but quite the bonding experience. But anyways, I had spent most of the second half of 2014 riding that canyon road. There was a particular section of it that I knew like the back of my hand, and I would ride it as fast as I could and just try to drag my knee in as many corners as possible. So on the way back down the mountain on my first round trip past that section, I was coming into one of the final corners in that section, and I was carrying a lot of speed into it. I had just come out of another corner, had my knee on the ground, felt like a superhero, and just wanted to crank it over as far as I could going through that last turn. So I'm coming up to the corner, and I'm like, I'm going pretty fast. I should probably use just a little bit of front brake and slow down a little bit. And then I was like, nah, the bike will handle it. I'll be fine. Well, guess what? The bike didn't handle it. It was cold, and I completely washed the front end out and just went for a big old slide. Luckily, coming out of that corner, the exit was uphill, and it was a pretty quick little kink. I had a dirt mound on the side. So rather than flying off of a cliff, I just skidded up the hill and into the dirt, which was still painful. I face planted, broke the shield, and cracked my helmet. My bike ended up in the dirt too, bent my rear set, scratched it up. Wasn't a good time, but I did actually ride out of there, which is pretty amazing. And that was the last time I went to the canyons and tried to ride as fast as I could. Beautiful evening. The crash before that was in, I think, March of 2014. It was because somebody flipped an illegal U-turn over a double yellow in front of me, and I wasn't obviously expecting that. So, mashed the brakes as hard as I could, basically did a stoppie into their car, didn't go over the car or anything, actually landed on my feet just with my bike on its side after I hit their car and came back down from the stoppie. Could have been way worse, but wasn't, thankfully. So, always anticipate somebody is going to do something stupid that you don't expect, and it's going to be a problem for you. So always be prepared on your motorcycle, as prepared as possible. Just pretend you're invisible when you're riding on the street. And that brings us to my first crash on my CBR 600RR. The first crash ever on a motorcycle. And this was, if I remember correctly, on December 28th, 2013, when I had gotten my CBR 600RR. First bike ever on December 3rd, 2013, which actually I'm coming up on 8 years now. That's pretty cool. But Got my first bike, started learning to ride, and crashed 3 weeks later. What a surprise, especially starting out on 600. So what happened? I thought I was a hot shot on my CBR 600R, but I was too scared to use the front brake because 2 4-piston calipers on 2 rotors on a tiny little front tire scared the heck out of me. So all I had learned how to use at that point in those 3.5 weeks was my rear brake. I was at the front of traffic going to get onto the freeway. Freeway on-ramp. Make a left at a light. Go straight. Then you have this nice decreasing radius of bank right-hand turn. A beautiful on-ramp that puts you onto the freeway. So I thought I was super comfortable and confident with my 600cc horsepower machine, cranking out 118 ponies. Opened up that throttle pretty hard in first gear, took it pretty close to the top. Before I knew it, I was coming up to that corner and did not know what to do, had no plan. So started using the rear brake in an attempt to slow down, and I did actually shut off a bunch of speed, but at the same time I was panicked and still going faster than I wanted to be, and target fixated on the guardrail and bumped into it and fell over. Luckily at that point I was probably going only like 15 or 20 miles an hour, but I looked like an absolute idiot in front of just an entire line of rush hour traffic that was behind me. Some people stopped and asked if I was okay and if I needed any help, but I was alright. Picked my bike up, started back up. Obviously she wasn't as pretty as she was before, but aside from a couple bruises and a severely bruised ego, I was okay, and learned to use the front brake after that. And that is all 10 of my crashes, recapped for you. And actually, now that I realize it, I kind of talked through what I did wrong and took away from each of those crashes. So I guess we covered that part too. Although I said I was going to do that as its own separate segment. But anyways, a few parting words and advice for anyone who has recently crashed their motorcycle, particularly if it's for the first time. As soon as you are able to, if you want to continue riding, get back in the saddle. Take an honest look at what happened and what you could have done differently. Go out and apply it in the real world. That will get you feeling good on a bike again as quickly as possible. It will ultimately make you a better, faster, safer rider. And as you continue to crash, for the most part, it gets easier. Every time you crash doing something differently, there's something new to learn from it. I thank goodness, thankfully, and I'm gonna, knock on some proverbial wood, I've never been super seriously injured before. I mean, I've been injured enough with that high side where I was in a wheelchair for a week and crutches for over a month, but overall, I've been very fortunate. So other things that'll help with this: don't ride too far outside of your comfort zone, and really don't push yourself outside of your comfort zone on the street. Not worth it. Gonna result in a mistake and be bad. Also, get very comfortable and familiar with your bike and how it handles. Practice emergency stops with your front brakes in a parking lot. Get comfortable feeling the rear wheel coming off the ground, a little bit of chatter, you maximizing that stopping performance. And get your suspension and bike dialed in for you so that it handles optimally for you, the individual on the motorcycle. But anyways, that is going to do it for me in this one. I hope you found this video helpful and insightful. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a gentle little click of the like button. Be sure to subscribe and check out my other videos as well. Posting content on a weekly basis. I love motorcycles. Got this here Tuono V4 factory, as well as a 2012 Triumph Daytona 675R track bike that I club race at an amateur level, and my Yamaha WR250X Supermoto that will be back soon. Got some track day fun stuff coming up in the next few weeks here that hopefully my hand will be fit enough for. Kind of counting on it, but should it be, there will be plenty of track day content for you guys coming soon. And some racing. Drop a comment below. Have you crashed before? What'd you do about it? Have you not crashed? Tell me how you've avoided it. Be interested in that one. Also, I'm doing a small 1,000 subscriber celebratory giveaway. It is a raffle. The video will probably be up as you're suggested next if it's still happening. The raffle is occurring Saturday, November 13th. Probably going to do it in the morning, I think, Pacific time, California time. So if you want to enter and have a shot at winning a $100 RevZilla gift card, go check out that video and the instructions on how to enter and do it. But thanks again for watching, and I will hope to catch you in the next one. Until then, later.